Now this is just a fairly random "this is what I'm doing" video, and what I'm doing is, it's that time of year where we process the apples. I'll switch this off for a moment because it's making a racket. So I'll just go through how I bottle these apples. First of all, I've got a liquid in here which is mostly lemon juice with a bit of water in, and that's just to stop the apples from going brown as I process them. And I put plenty of lemon juice in there, plenty. So I peel the apples. I'm a bit quick at peeling the apples, and there'll be a fair bit of wastage, but that doesn't matter because I've got more apples than I could ever cope with. They're not my apples, they're other people's apples who don't use them at all and give me permission to take them. So I just quickly peel them. And these are not even cooking apples, these are eating apples. I do have access to some cooking apples, but at the moment I've got loads and loads of eating apples. So then I just quickly cut them into chunks. Put them in there. Make sure that get them mostly submerged. That's the dog bursting the door open to be in, and she's burst the door open and gone back out. She can't get in because there's a chair in the way. Come on in. Here, rat bag. So I've got me a hat on and me a jacket on because we've just put the boiler on. I've just switched it off. I've just switched it on and I've just switched it off to dry some clothes out, because it's definitely not a clothes drying day today. And as I say, this is just the way I do it, but I'll prove to you in a minute that the way I do it is the way I'll continue doing it, because I can keep these apples in good condition for over a year. Because on a night when we have our main meal, we have a pudding, and with our pudding we always have some fruit, and that fruit will be what I've collected, either apples, brambles, plums or rose hips, big rose hips, and you've seen the big rose hips if you've seen some of my previous videos. And I should be doing, it's Friday today, so I should be doing a fire it up Friday, preferably with fat wood, but I might get onto that and I might not. Right, so what I do then is I take a jar, and these are all, these aren't Kilner jars or mason jars, although I do have Kilner and mason jars. These are just old Uncle Ben's jars, but what they've got to have is a clicky top. Can you hear that? So when there's a vacuum in there, that top will go down and it won't click anymore. Right, one other thing. Hot water. I don't particularly want that to be hot at this stage, but it doesn't matter. A sugar syrup. Then what I'll do is I'll take the jar. At this moment this jar is not sterile, neither are these apples. At this moment we're not too worried about that. fill the jar up, try and settle them a bit. Got massive air gaps in there. And then I'll just top it up with this syrup. So within about ½ an inch of the top. And then I'll put the lid on, and I won't tighten it up tight at this time, but I'll put it on, and then it goes into the pressure cooker, and I can get 4 in the pressure cooker, but I'm not using the pressure cooker as a pressure cooker. The weight is off it when I put the lid on, and so it won't be boiling under pressure when I boil it. It'll just be at atmospheric pressure, but it's the only pot I've got that's big enough to hold the jars. So I've got one more to do. So I'll come back to you when it's full. Right, so I've now filled up 4 jars, which is what I can put in. And I don't know whether I mentioned, but you fill it up within about ½ an inch of the top. If you let the fluid go too far down, then there's a more massive vacuum in here, and when it comes to actually opening the lid, it's harder to get it open. If you put it too far up, the liquid, bring the liquid right up to the top, then you won't create sufficient vacuum in here, and your lid might not seal properly. So that's not good. So I'll put the heating back on and put it back off again. So I'll put this now in the pressure cooker. Which is, oh, we're going to have a collapse here in a minute. Right, so we're a bit crowded in the kitchen. Right, so we've got the 4 jars in the pressure cooker now, and I don't know whether you can see, but I've got a few more apples and a few more jars here to do, so it's like a continuous process. And I take the kettle of warm water, put it in the... I've just tightened the tops. Don't worry, the jars will not explode. They're not massively tight, but they will be sealed tight. But they'll be slack enough so that as pressure builds up in the jars, the excess pressure can get out. I've filled it up with some lukewarm water, not filled it up, but the water level is up to here. So there's a good bit of thermal mass in there. And I've switched it on low at the moment, so it's just warming up. With these jars, you don't want to thermally shock them. So if the jar's hot, don't pour freezing cold water on it, and don't take a freezing cold jar and stick it in boiling water, because you stand to, at the very least, weaken it, and at the worst, crack it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the top on, because we all know that it boils quicker with the top on. I've taken the weight off, so there's going to be no pressure in the pressure cooker. There's the weight. It gives the pressure cooker its pressure. Some bits have fallen out there. Right, so I can close that. Just for the sake of stopping so much steam coming out, and I'll leave that now to come to the boil. In fact, I'll whack it up on the temperature a bit. When it comes to the boil, I can whack the temperature down a bit. And it's only going to come to boiling. Once it's boiling, that's it. That's as hot as it's going to get. And then I want it to come to boiling and boil for about 10 to 15 minutes boiling, and that'll sterilise all the apples and the inside of the jar and everything. I'll wait till it's boiled then, wait till we've had it boiling 15 minutes, and I'll show you what we do next. So in the meantime, I've got more jars here and more apples, so I can continue processing, and I'll get 12 jars done in this batch, I should. Right, I'll crack on then. Right, well, the proof is always in the pudding, and these 2 jars that I did last year, this was done on the 22nd of October 2019, and this was done on the 10th of October 2019. Now we're going to have a heck of a job opening the lid on this jar without destroying the seal, unless I bring it to the boil, warm it up considerably, because I've left too much of a gap in there. But that was all part of the learning process. And you'll also notice that there's a lot of fluid at the bottom. The apples actually float on the fluid at the bottom, and you just can't avoid that. And so the apples will shrink down a bit over time and they'll rise up, but it's just part of what happens unless I learn a different technique. Somebody gives me some tips and I do it a different way, but I know this way works, so at the moment I'm carrying on this way. So that's last year's. This one's just over a year old, and this one's just under a year old. So you can preserve your apples for at least a year using this method. The other method we use is to put them in the freezer, and sometimes we put them in the freezer raw. We'll still soak them in the lemon juice mix, and then just put them in a carton and then put them straight in the freezer. Sometimes we'll blanch them, just boil them, just a quick heating. So that's the other way we do it. Now next year I'd also like to experiment with dehydrating, so we'll give that a try next year. But one of the main reasons I like to do it this way is, first of all, for freezer space, and secondly, if you get a power cut, you're going to have to find somewhere running your freezer or lose a lot of your produce. So that's why I like to do it, and I'd like to try the dehydration method as well. So this hasn't come to the boil yet. It's a lot of water in there. Have we got the right ring on? Is it actually on? Yeah. Yes, it's on. Turn it up a bit. So we'll come back when this has been boiling for 10 or 15 minutes. I'll just show you the end process. Okay, these have been boiling for 10 minutes now. I'm going to switch the heat off, put some rubber gloves on because the jars are going to be hot. I don't want them boiling too long because they're an eating apple. They're a fairly dense eating apple. They're not something I think that would fly off the shelves nowadays. But even so, I don't want them going too soggy. I want to get them sterilised but not too soggy. So I'm going to take them out. Now, at the moment the lids are bulging up because they're under pressure. These jars are under pressure. I'm just going to make sure the tops are tightened. And then I'm just going to put them on the windowsill on a towel so they can cool slowly. and then I'm going to be ready for the next batch. So that's them on the windowsill, just cooling, and it'll take a good long time for the vacuum to form in there and for these to click down. And if after a good hour or so, or when I come back to them, if the tops are still clicky, or they've gone clicky, like this one, that's not a good example, it's not making a noise. Yeah, that's a good example. If it goes like this, then I know it's not sealed, and I've got to put it through the boiling process again until it does seal. Then finally what I've got to do is, that's a label from last year, 2019. I'm not worried about that. I've just got to stick some new labels on so I know when they were done and how old they are. And I've got them on the windowsill here, but I really don't want them, if it was a sunny day, it's not a sunny day, but if it was, I don't want the sun shining on them, because the sunlight will degrade them. So when you store them, you want them stored in a relatively stable area in the dark without the sun on them. And they will go, as you saw from the earlier ones from last year, they will go a little brown, but don't worry about that. There's probably a very good reason besides convenience why people buy things from supermarkets. It looks good, it might look good, but you know, I'd really rather eat my own produce where I can. We don't always do that, of course. So that's just how I do it, how I bottle fruit. And I've gone through it on a previous video, but it is this time of year again, and it's not difficult. It takes a bit of time. Unfortunately, other than the compost heap, we've got no other use for the peelings. If we had chickens or pigs, that would be alright, or I could take them up to the horse maybe. Not our horse, by the way, but a horse. So nothing will get wasted, but it's just a shame we don't have something more substantial or productive to do with the peelings. But as I say, they'll go in the compost. So that's it for now then, and if I've got time, I will be doing some sort of fire up today because it is Friday. So we'll see what that entails. Right, I'll catch you later then.